Welcome to True Crime Bites, Death Row and Executions, where we honor lives lost and revisit the final chapters of those who crossed the line. On November 20th, 2025, the state of Florida is scheduled to end the life of Richard Barry Randolph. At 6 p.m. at the Florida State Prison, the 63-year-old man will be executed by lethal injection, 36 years after he was first sentenced to death. His will be the 17th execution carried out by Florida in 2025, a record pace for the state since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. But behind the statistics, the legal motions, and the countdown to a state-sanctioned death, there is a story. It's a story of a brutal and senseless crime, a 35-year legal battle, and a life that was violently cut short. This is the case of Richard Barry Randolph and the murder of Minnie Ruth McCollum. In cases like this, it's a profound tragedy that the public record is filled with the details of a person's death, but so few of their life. Minnie Ruth McCollum was not just a name in a court file. She was a manager at the Handyway convenience store in Palatka, Florida. She was a person starting her workday on a Monday morning, August 15, 1988. She was known in her community. We know this because on that morning, regular customers noticed something was wrong. Terry Sorrell, a regular, and two custodians, Dorothy and Deborah Patilla, arrived at the store shortly after 7 a.m. They saw a man they recognized as a former employee, Richard Barry Randolph, wearing a store smock and locking the front door. When they asked him where Mrs. McCollum was, Randolph spun a lie. He told them her car had broken down, that he was fixing it, and that he was leaving to pick her up. He then drove away in Minnie Ruth McCollum's car. The women's intuition was right. They saw through the window that the store was in disarray and called the sheriff's office. Their actions are a testament to a community where people look out for one another. But what they feared had already happened. A deputy responded and broke into the locked store. What he found was a scene of horrific violence. Minnie Ruth McCollum was lying on her back, naked from the waist down. She was still alive, but barely, moaning slightly. She had been beaten, strangled, and stabbed. Blood was coming from the back of her head and neck. A knife was found beside her. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital. Doctors testified that she arrived in a coma, her head massively beaten and contused. She had multiple lacerations to her scalp, face, and neck. Her left jawbone was fractured. She had a stab wound near her left eye. For 6 days, she remained in that coma. On the 6th day, Minnie Ruth McCollum died from severe brain injuries. The manhunt for her attacker, however, was already over. Richard Barry Randolph was arrested just a few hours after the attack. He was found at a grocery store in Jacksonville, trying to borrow money and cash and lottery tickets he had stolen from the Handyway. He was a 26-year-old U.S. Army veteran who had been fired from that same convenience store, and he confessed. In a detailed interview with detectives, Randolph laid out the entire event. He said he had planned to enter the store, open the safe while McCollum was outside checking gas pumps, and leave unseen. But his plan failed. The manager, Mrs. McCollum, returned and saw him. He told police she panicked and a struggle began. He said she was a lot tougher than he had expected, but he eventually forced her into the back room. He hit her with his hands and fists until she quieted down. He tried to open the safe but failed. When Mrs. McCollum started moving again, he attacked her again, wrapping the drawstring from his sweatshirt around her neck until she stopped struggling. When she still made noises, he grabbed a small knife and stabbed her. He told detectives he then raped her. His stated reason? To make it appear as if a maniac had committed the crime. It is a chilling admission, one that removes all doubt of his guilt and paints a horrifying picture of his mindset. After the assault, he put on a store uniform, stole the store's video camera, grabbed Mrs. McCollum's keys, locked the store, and fled in her car. The legal process was swift at first. In 1989, a jury found Richard Barry Randolph guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, armed robbery, sexual battery with a deadly weapon, and grand theft of a motor vehicle. During the penalty phase, the jury recommended a sentence of death. The trial judge, in his final sentencing order, found 4 separate aggravating circumstances that justified the death penalty. 1. The murder was committed during the commission of a sexual battery. 2. The murder was committed to avoid or prevent a lawful arrest. 3. The murder was committed for pecuniary or financial gain. 4. And finally, the murder was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. The judge found no statutory mitigating circumstances, no legal factors that weighed in Randolph's favor. The sentence was death. And so began the part of the story that spans decades. For the next 35 years, Richard Barry Randolph has lived on Florida's death row, filing appeal after appeal. His legal teams have argued many points. They argued that he was denied a neutral judge. They presented evidence that he had suffered cruelty as a child from his adoptive parents. They argued his drug addiction at the time was a mitigating factor. This is a point of view often debated. How much does a person's past, no matter how tragic, weigh against the brutality of their actions? Year after year, court after court, the appeals were denied. The Florida Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court have repeatedly upheld his conviction and his sentence. In 2024, one appeal noted that he had recently discovered the identity of his birth parents, claiming this would show he lacked a genetic predisposition to criminal violence. This, too, was denied. Now the road has run out. On October 21, 2025, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the death warrant for Richard Barry Randolph. As recently as November 4th, Randolph filed his 4th successive post-conviction motion. It was denied. As of this recording, on November 14th, his attorneys are still filing last-minute appeals to the Florida Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court, but these are seen as procedural long shots. The state is ready to proceed. For the families involved, these final days are an agonizing countdown. For the family of Minnie Ruth McCollum, it is the end of a 36-year legal ordeal, a final grim chapter in a story that began with a senseless and violent act on a summer morning in 1988. For 36 years, the justice system has debated the life of the man who took hers. In 6 days, that debate will end. Thank you for watching. If you believe in the importance of remembering victims of crime, please share this story. Subscribe for more reports on cases that deserve to be understood. As always, stay curious and stay safe.